on this episode of the WildFed podcast.
I heard a story from a man. He started from a perspective of back to a time when we knew more than we knew today.
You just walked over to a deer and picked it up, man, as we're getting ready to go into the Inipi.
It was a beautiful and confusing time.
We're glassing this white buffalo, and she just gets up and looks at us. She starts to head off. All of a sudden, the whole herd crashing down through the water splashing.
We obviously didn't understand what you were saying, but we could feel what you were saying.
When you describe God as Tunkashila Wakantanka, the old grandfather who's the great mystery. It's so unfortunate to think about the dire state of endangered languages in this world.
Language shapes your neural network and how you think about the world.
Food connects us to the earth, and so are we gonna eat that Twinkie in the package, or are you gonna eat this buffalo liver? I'd rather have the strength of the buffalo running through me.
Episode 102 of the WildFed podcast, A Buffalo Nation, with Travis Good Bull Man Condon, is brought to you by Surthrival.
Surthrival is a nutritional supplement company developed by me to deal with the health issues that emerge from our modern lifestyle. Whether it's invigorating your immune system, igniting your hormone systems, restoring your digestion, raising your vitamin D levels, or helping you supercharge your metabolism, Surthrival can help you reach your health goals with wholesome, nature-based supplementation. Surthrival carries premium plant, fungi, and animal-based supplements like medicinal mushrooms, colostrum and elk antler formulas, pine pollen tinctures, and more. Head over to surthrival.com to check out the entire lineup. Hunting helped make us human, but the way we approach it has changed dramatically over the last few centuries, particularly here in the West. Commercialization, ego gratification, and an attitude of dominion over the land has turned many people away from our ancestral connection to wild animals and our food. Recently, there's been a renewed interest in hunting, with many looking to be initiated into the hunt, not just thrown into the modern attitudes and practices that have overshadowed it. That's why my friend Monsell Denton created Sacred Hunting. Sacred Hunting brings new or experienced hunters out on the land to learn to stalk, harvest, and field dress animals in a retreat-type setting, and in conjunction with sweat lodges, entheogenic ceremonies, and strong intention setting that prepares hunters for a lifelong spiritual relationship with the land and the animals they hunt. If you want to learn to hunt in a way that honors the land, our ancient human tradition, and the animals we pursue, check out sacredhunting.com. Monsell and his team will guide you through beginner hunts, and more experienced hunters will find unique opportunities available across the country and globe, like access deer hunts on Molokai in Hawaii, and even a northern Siberia hunt with the Nenets people in 2022. There are only a few spots available per hunt, so go to sacredhunting.com and complete their 2-minute application. Discounts are available when you let them know you heard about them on the WildFed podcast. Again, go to sacredhunting.com to learn more about Monsell and Sacred Hunting on episode 59 of the WildFed podcast. I'm Daniel Vitalis, and you're listening to the WildFed podcast, a show about reconnecting with nature through hunting, fishing, foraging, and food. WildFed. Food is all around you.
I'm recording this from the road today as Avani and I are making our way home from North and South Dakota. Instead of flying, we drove out so we could bring our coolers, which to our delight and gratitude are now brimming with buffalo meat. Our harvest was enough to share with our host, the many hands that helped us, and our production team too. As he always has, the buffalo provides. Now, of course, I know they're properly called bison today. Scientific name, bison. But after a week on the Standing Rock Reservation, it's getting hard to call them that. They're the people, Lakota and Dakota, say buffalo. And who knows better than a people whose life way and history has been so inextricably linked to this animal. So for now, I'll call them what they call them. Travis, our host, invited us out to harvest a buffalo on the prairie and to share a traditional meal with some elders from the community. He put in a tremendous amount of work with us, gutting, butchering, and packing our buffalo. He shared meals with us and ceremony, language, stories, and songs. It's hard to describe all the magic we experienced during our stay there, and most is probably best kept close to the heart anyway, but suffice it to say that we are leaving here with more than full coolers. Our hearts are full too, with joy and love and appreciation for our new friends. We're already planning our trip back to what's some of the most beautiful country we've ever visited and some of the most gracious folks we've ever met. Our hunt, our choke cherry harvest, and of course the incredible meal we shared after will all be featured in Season 2 of WildFed on the Outdoor Channel. I've already reviewed the footage and I can hardly wait for you to see it. So, wopila, thanks and gratitude. Your listenership, as always, is appreciated. Well, I'm sitting here in Bismarck, North Dakota, in a Hilton, looking over at my beautiful wife, Avani Vitalis. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
Looking over at Grant Giuliano.
Am I beautiful too?
In your own way, Grant, you really are. Spiritually.
I can't compete with Avani.
Yeah, I like her hair more, but Grant Giuliano, our producer, and of course our host here this week and our guest on the show, Travis Condon. Travis, Good Bull Man Condon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for hosting us, man.
Hey, man. It's my honor, my pleasure for sure.
Tell people a little bit about where we are and who you are, man.
So where we are is we're in Bismarck, Mandan, North Dakota, right along the beautiful Missouri River, Mini Shoshe, as we call it. And we're approximately 35 to 40 miles north of the Standing Rock Reservation, and that's my home turf. That's where I grew up. Fort Yates, North Dakota. There I lived until I was in second grade, third grade through eighth grade. I was in Rapid City, the beautiful Black Hills of South Dakota. And then pretty much in my freshman year I was in South Dakota too, and then I came back my sophomore through senior year in high school, and I finished out at Standing Rock. So most of my time's definitely been at Standing Rock. The beautiful reservation, it's a huge chunk of land.
It is big, huh?
Yeah. And then there's the Cheyenne River Reservation just south of it, and another beautiful big chunk of land. You got all these reservations kind of sparsed out here and there. So it used to be from the 1851 and the 1868 treaties with the people of the area. There used to be a huge land base, right? So slowly shrunk down to the reservations. But we're here, and there's a lot of historical stuff that's happened in this area. Lewis and Clark came up through here, right? Sakakawea, Sitting Bull. I mean, we got some good stories around here for sure. It's
I'm curious how you guys have felt being here, but it seems all this history feels so close.
Yeah, like recent almost.
Recent.
Yes.
The way people talk about it, it's like as if it's just happened.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's just palpable in the air here.
Yeah. And it's like, and it feels like that all the way down. And like when you get into like the Black Hills too, there's just this feeling of how like you're so close to that past. You know, I mean, that's how I feel personally.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. I love where I grew up.
Could you describe for us who the people here are? I think for the average listener who isn't really studied up on it, it's a little bit confusing. Who are the Lakota? Who are the Dakota? Who are the Sioux? How does that? Could you kind of explain that for people listening so they have sort of like a little bit of a primer, so as we go forward they understand what we're talking about?
Sure. Yeah. So it's a little complex, I guess. You know, it's almost it'd be better if you almost had like a little map to kind of point. So here's the 4 bands of the Dakota, right? And then here's the two bands of the what they call the middle Sioux, but they're also Dakota. And then you got the Teton, the Lakota, right? So I mean, there's those 7 sacred fires, if you will, of people. And then the Teton, as they say, the Lakota, can actually be broken down into another 7 fire council, if you will. There's different, like the Oglala, the Hunkpapa. That's like where Sitting Bull came from. Oglala's famous for like Red Cloud.
Red Cloud,
yeah. Exactly. Minikoju. There's these names, right, that people really associate with as Lakota people. So there's our people were culturally very similar, very real, similar customs, the Dakota and the Lakota people. The language was mutually intelligible to each other. They could obviously speak back and forth to each other, but there's just little subtle differences, little word differences, little for instance, la, right in the names itself, right, la and da, you know, and my mom's people is the Yanktonay Dakota. So their ancestral land, if you will, was east of the river here. So we're on the east side of the Missouri River here. So east, pretty much to the Minnesota, area. The Yanktonais would have interspersed with the Minnesota and the eastern Dakota people, but they also would have been here mingling with the Lakota, and then fighting with the Mandan people, the Hidatsa people, and the Arikara people, kind of their ancestral enemies.
Border type disputes to keep,
Yeah, and so as far as like the Sioux people, they were highly warrior. There was there were some warriors in there for sure, right? But there was this also the semi-nomadic people here, right? The Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara, where they lived in earth lodges. They had palisades, kind of like fortresses type deal, where they're protecting their village. And
for people hearing that too, the palisades, you're talking like, are you guys familiar with what this is?
No.
So it's like these fences going around that would be like basically upright tree trunks that were cut.
Correct.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And creating like a huge fence wall around, and then the Europeans here started doing it the same way, right? Around their
with
forts.
their forts, correct. Yep. And so and they had some agricultural, right? There's some really good history with agriculture there, but they're also buffalo hunters too, so they would go out and there was just there's just disputes, I suppose, but our warfare was different. It's not like we were trying to annihilate the Mandan people or whatever the case may be, or vice versa. It was just a different kind of warfare for sure. But so there's a lot of history with that, and then actually where the word Sioux comes from, the way I understand it from history, is that the eastern Anishinaabe people or whatever, or what they say, the Ojibwe or the Chippewa people, whatever, called us Nottawassee or something. I'm not good in their language, but Nottawassee, something like a lesser snake, and the people to their east would have been like the bigger snake or something like that. But when the French people came along, they added the "oo," and so then that became Sioux. Nottawassee became Nottawassee, and then the word Sioux just took off, I guess.
You were
I
saying
remember asking you about that.
because you were saying like, hey, I recognize the spelling here as French.
Yeah, the OU sound
Yeah.
is very prevalent in the French language. So
So I would say
was wondering.
throughout the world, we're probably known as the Sioux people.
Now, when you talk about the Siouan people, would that include the Mandan, or would they?
Correct. So when
Okay,
we're
they are,
talking
yeah.
about we're talking about just like an anthropological word for like a language stock, right? So
Okay.
so where there was an ancestral language there somewhere, and so there's certain instances that come out where you can tell the words are really similar in an unintelligible language to each other, but there's these words, right, that kind of there's a similarity there for sure. So that's what they call like a language stock, Siouan.
Okay.
So that includes the Lakota, Dakota, up and down the Missouri. Really, there's a lot of tribes. I don't want to speak for some of these other tribes, but the ones I know for sure would be like then the Mandan, Hidatsa are also like that. The Crow people, because
the Crow people are Siouan.
because there's a relationship there to the Hidatsa people.
Oh, okay.
And there's some other. I mean, don't have all the right references in front of
Yeah.
me, because there's a lot of tribes for sure.
Sure. I think when a lot of people in the U.S., a lot of European descended people think about Native people of North America, there's this time period of the Sioux on the plains that is so iconic to people. It's what they kind of imagine. The teepees and the buffalo and all of that. But this is kind of where all that was.
Yeah, this is where that all took place.
I think that's what people think of. Like, people often say, like, well, the Native Americans did this. The Native Americans would believe this. And it's like, well, there is a lot of different tribes of Native Americans all over the country.
Yeah, a lot of different cosmological, universal perspectives out there, and the language is reflective of that too. So that's really interesting for sure.
And like so many landscapes across the continent there that would shape culture, as people
Absolutely.
adjust to the place.
Yeah, that's why
Varying.
all the people in their local homeland, if you will, there was sacred places to them, right? For sure.
Dakota means friend,
Yeah, like
ally.
yes.
So and Lakota.
same. It's the same thing. It's just that little dialectical difference there. I don't know if that's a word, dialectical, but
Works for me.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Get it.
Last night, it was amazing. We were sitting with Tom, who is was raised speaking Lakota as his primary language.
Yes.
It occurred to us after we left that there's probably not very many people left who that was their primary language, right?
Right.
Maybe he's the last generation of people like that. Is there anyone after him that would have grown up?
Well, he's in his 70s, and there's a man I know personally who he's getting close to 60, but he's in his 50s at the moment, and he's a great speaker too.
Mm-hmm.
And younger than him, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. Not on Standing Rock anyway. I can't speak for a lot of the other reservations because there's Rosebud Reservation down in South Dakota and Pine Ridge Reservation, South Dakota, that they have huge population bases down there.
Okay.
And so there's definitely more speakers down there too. But I know our numbers are really, really slim these days.
I would just think especially people who speak English as their second language, not their primary. Because you're quite fluent in Dakota. I mean, it looked to us last night. I know you've been very humble about it, but we watched you, listen to you speak with somebody who's raised speaking it, and you quite fluent. So, but English would have been your first language.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. So English is my native language.
Yeah, right. So, we're sitting there last night, and what was neat to me was at one point I said, "Hey, wait, you speak Lakota, you speak Dakota." And you're like, wow, we pretty much understand each other.
Yeah. And it's like, it's really like a, there's really just subtle differences, really. So it's just, sometimes it is just switching the D for the L sound, if you will. But there's, like I said, there's other differences.
Did you grow up learning it?
No, not at all.
No,
I grew up wanting to be a cowboy.
When did you start diving into the language?
Oh, not until I was in college.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would have been 22, 23, somewhere around there.
Wanted to be a cowboy.
Yeah, well, so my mom was raised on a ranch,
Yeah.
and growing up, it was just, for the most part, it was me, her, and my sister as as a real young boy, and we would go to a lot of rodeos. And my uncles, they were all, calf ropers, steer wrestlers, as we say, but probably the person who I looked up to the most was my cousin TJ. He was a bullfighter. And so I was really, really into rodeos probably up until I was, until I moved to Rapid City, so after second grade, and then I was all about city life after that.
Yeah.
So I grew up in the country, on the out of town of Fort Yates, and pretty beautiful spot. So where we're at my childhood home was on a hill, and there's a good look over the Missouri River and the community of Fort Yates for the most part too. Yeah. So
what changed? Because you speak Dakota, your handicraft work, seeing your
unbelievable.
The quill work
And your bag with the beadwork too.
Your chanupa that you carved, so seeing the work that you're doing, and then also, you took me on my first buffalo hunt. So for all these things to happen, like you said, you wanted to be a cowboy, you got into urban life, and you very much have a foot in both worlds, but something drew you to the traditional ways as well. So I'm kind of curious about that story.
Yeah, it's really interesting, man. So for somewhere along the lines in college there, I wanted to learn another language, right? And so I got the Rosetta Stone type stuff, if you will, for Spanish. Like what a great language to learn,
My Rosetta Stone's still sitting on the shelf.
Is
it's
it?
been 15 years.
Right? And anyway, so I'm learning a little bit. And then I happened to, at the same time, started getting interested in archery. I saw this movie, and it was actually about an old Indian man and his grandson. And the point of the story was the old Indian man liked to go deer hunting with a stick bow and his one arrow,
One arrow.
Yeah, in his one arrow. And I was like, wow. And I'm thinking, wow, people still do that? And so I kind of did a deep dive into primitive archery and stick bows and arrow making. And then with that, you also need the quivers and the bow case or whatever. So anyway, I started diving into that a little bit too. And then while I'm learning Spanish, I start thinking, I kind of look in the mirror one day, I guess, like, well, who are you? Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so then something switched to where I'm going to learn my tongue, my ancestral tongue. And so ever since then, there's been periods of like peaks and valleys, if you will, of really, and plateaus also, you know, in the whole language learning and in the motivation process too, because when you have such a low language base of people, sometimes it's hard to really want to stay motivated, you know. But as far as because you have fewer and fewer opportunities to actually speak, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I take this deep dive into language and I start labeling everything. And there was really like
physically around the house.
Yeah, physically, exactly.
That's what I saw Arthur do when he was learning Passamaquoddy and go to his house and just everything had a little tag on it. You know?
And it really helps. It really helps. And then it got to a point where instead of the actual objects, then I would put like a label up there of the verb that you would use the object with. So like just like for example, to wipe down or to tie or to close, you know, all these different like verbs, if you will. And that was in college and I was in Fargo. And so I was really just learning from books, you know, for the most part. My pronunciation was probably terrible, you know, those early years. And then I would go back home and some of my good bros were really starting to get interested in traditional stuff, spiritual stuff, if you will. And so then I went to my first Inipi Sweat, and then I'm learning the language, but then I got to hear like a mentor of mine not for the first time. I met him multiple times before, but like this was the first time in Inipi, and he's really, you know, Lila Lakota, I speak in Lakota, you know. And it's like, wow, this is who I am, this is who I'm going to be. And so it just kind of, you know, I'm still learning to this day. Yeah.
Hearing that language spoke.
In the Sweat Lodge, especially.
Unbelievable. We were speaking of this, that we obviously didn't understand what you were saying, but we could feel what you were saying, if that makes sense. Just this, like, it was a deep experience for us to hear you speak in that environment, you know? It was just, moving.
Yeah. And you passed to us Dakota Dictionary and Grammar, and showed me the apps as well. For the what is the language consortium?
It's called the Lakota Language Consortium.
Okay, right. So
the LLC as it's called, and so I'm a part of this. I'm on the board of this organization, and so I kind of always see myself as a struggling student. So I see myself on this board as throwing out ideas to help other struggling students.
People can relate to
right. And so anyway, we've you know, throughout the years, but like these apps, so you can, they're free. You can go to your app store and pretty much type in the new Lakota dictionary. And then there's also what's called Owoksape. That's Owoksape. Using the Roman letter system. So that's called Owoksape. So those apps can help. There's it's the dictionary. It'll give you the word, the definition, and you can actually hit the buttons to hear the
spoken
proper pronunciation.
And you can hear a male or female voice too.
Correct. And those are two elders, So
okay, that's not Siri.
No, not
the robot voice,
right? Because you know, like when you go to like English words, you'll get the sort of robot voice, you know. But I'm very motivated to learn some. You know, I mean, I can't picture I would ever become a fluent speaker or anything, but I mean, just very moved by it because I've for a long time I've talked on this show and my last show about how language shapes, you know, your neural network and how you think about the world. And I'm curious about that part too. Like as you started learning the language, you know, like did it reframe anything for you or your view of the world?
I think it definitely brought me closer to nature because there's so many, like for instance, a person who likes to sleep in, you would say, when you would see them, you would say matromana. That means like smells like a bear. Right.
I love it.
Yeah, and
like the hibernating bear,
or he's or like skinny as a crane. You know, there's these phrases. You know, there's these, and just certain like for instance, like the word I was telling you about, the word for stones is a tunkan, is like the old ones, right? But that's also the word that's a root word that's in the word tunkashila, which is like grandfather. So you got the old one, then the grandfather with the wisdom, you know, and then when you describe God, that's Tunkashila Wakantanka, like the old grandfather who's the great mystery. Really, it's kind of what that and the old people, they whenever they referred to God, it was always Tunkashila Wakantanka. Is how they put it together.
Okay, it was both of those.
Yeah, exactly.
Because I hear them said separately very often.
Yeah, and
too.
these days, yeah, but in the old days, they would have definitely said it together, and it would have been very like, you know, they wouldn't just throw that out there all the time, right? That's
okay. Sort of sacred words to even speak.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been in like more like if you're really kind of in a humble environment and you're describing something, but yeah, I mean, it's just not like people were. You know, unless because they would be by themselves, you know, but they wouldn't be like in a crowd doing such things. So it was always more like a humble, really private experience with God.
It's pretty wild to look at the dictionary because I would hear something said and I would want to go look it up, or like this morning you were asking like wopala, like
wopila.
That's it. What that?
So I'm like
looking
it
I've heard
up.
that word a lot.
I'm like,
this
I'm pretty
week
sure it's thank you, but
or I was thinking maybe blessing, something along those lines. But then it was thank you.
So we look it up, and then it's just like you look at how things are spelled, and it's a little confusing. But then, like you were kind of hinting at a moment ago, this wasn't a written language, so we're having to take the Roman alphabet, right? And then apply it, like reverse engineer out spellings for things, and then a pronunciation guide, and so it's just interesting to see how what it takes to preserve something into the modern world, so that it could be learned. Yeah, because you told us about a language that's being reconstructed from a Bible.
Yeah, out east. Yeah, out in your guys' neck of the woods.
You know,
I'm pretty sure it's the Wampanoag people, people of the First Light. I saw a documentary about it. I wish I would have reviewed that actually, and then just so I could throw the woman's name out there. Yeah. But and the documentary for that matter. But so there was no living speakers, but there's all these words around out there. You can write all the rivers, certain things that they were able to they were somehow reverse engineered that language. They with the
missionaries had translated the Bible into their language.
Correct.
And the language is lost except for the Bible.
Correct.
And then they can take that Bible and then try to
there was probably other written documentations around that time that they were able to find. Maybe I shouldn't just kind of speak for them.
Right, of course.
Right. Yeah. So whatever written materials that they were able to research and dig up, I guess if you will, they were with the help. They were doing it by themselves, but then there was like I want to say maybe a big time linguist anyway out east kind of wanted to help, and then they ended up helping each other. Yeah. And so they're able to reconstruct some of that stuff. So so I guess it's possible, right? So I want to say there's over there they're revitalizing the language to the best of their ability, but they're speaking it today. Yeah. And so it's shaping their worldview today, right?
Yeah. You know, Grant, something, because we did a lot of caravanning, production team in one car, us and, Avani and Travis and I in another vehicle. And so there's a lot of conversations that happen in your vehicle and in our vehicle. But something Travis was telling us about last night was not the Language Consortium, but there was another organization, a sister organization.
The Language Conservancy.
Okay.
The language, TLC, the Language Conservancy.
You were telling us how they're sending people in to do these almost like triage style quick dictionaries.
Yeah,
right?
like like a rapid word collection where they're going in. They're taking a team in, if you will, with all this equipment, and they're taking. So, for instance, up by Banff, the Stony people up there. I know they went in there. And there's
Alberta.
Yeah, there's very little documentation of their language, and there's a I don't know how many. I can't tell you how many speakers they have left. So they go in there and they have people, so they'll have a word list, an English word list. And they'll, like if it was just like Grant and I go together, you two go together. And so like you're interviewing each other, so to speak, but you're taking this word list for all these things, like all the bathroom, kitchen, living room. Yeah. And then all the birds, animals. I mean, there's this once you start getting into it, thousands and thousands of words, right? And so they're saying how, okay, they would say like spoon, then their language, fork, then, and so they're doing this to multiple times through all these different speakers, and so that way they're corroborating, making sure all these words are consistent and the same, and then they're putting it into a dictionary for these communities, and they're using the Lakota Language Consortium. We got some textbooks, if you will, so they're kind of like the blueprint then at that point. So all you have to do is just switch out the language, so because you got the artwork and everything, and then we're looking at textbooks, and hopefully, and there's just like I was talking about with the apps, there's the same thing for some of these other languages now too. So and then like it's so unfortunate to think about the dire state of endangered languages in this world.
Yeah.
And when you lose a part of that, you really lose a part of humanity.
Yep. Yes, definitely.
And so not everybody is fortunate enough to have the resources to be able to do what the conservancies are trying to do. So yeah, shout out to them, man.
Yeah, what a cool project. It's unfortunate that we need it, but now's the time to do it.
So it's called the Language Conservancy, and then again, I'm on the board of the Lakota Language Consortium.
Yeah. I've never connected before in such a strong way the Conservancy of language and the Conservancy of nature, or like the revitalization of language and the revitalization of land. But being with you this week, I'm not quite, it'd be hard for me to describe how I see them fitting together, but I'm seeing that they fit together, that they're like two wings of the same creature or something, like of, I guess it's like going back to what you said in that in the language, so much of what's spoken is nature based, and so when that's lost, you end up with people who just have these languages that are so urbanized, and people don't know nature anymore and don't speak, about nature in the same way anymore. And so if the idea of trying to regenerate land, but not having regenerated our minds through language to even understand that, I don't know, it's so like loosely organized in my mind. It's like this concept that I don't have fully formed, but through connecting with you this week, I see that they are connected. If that makes sense.
Yeah,
makes sense.
Yeah. So let me give you like a small example. So my wife, for whatever reason, like the directions just give her problems. Like, where are we? What way is that way? What I mean? And so like there's the 4 directions, right? And so the English versions, northeast, southwest, like what do those even mean? Those are just like words that mean a general directions. However, in Lakota, you got Wiochpiata for the west. And that's kind of like the place where the sun sets, Wazia for north, and that's like the place of the pines, if you will. So north,
get up to those boreal forests.
Yeah, exactly. Then you got the east, Wiohiampa. It's like where the sun illuminates, if you will, coming from the east. And then in the south, Itokaha, and it's like that's an interesting one. There's actually some debate on that one, but a lot of people say it comes from Ite for the face, and
say it again because you hit your mic.
Ite for the face, and Kaha to make. So Itokaha, they say, is where the place where the faces are made. So like I was telling Daniel, there's speculation, but I almost feel like there's reference to the to the people down south and everything with the the temples and the pyramids and all that good stuff. So that's kind of that's my thoughts.
Yeah, because as a clearer picture emerges, the history of North America told from the European perspective they didn't know what they had missed, of course, and they had tremendous biases, and they had huge agendas, an incentive not to tell all the truth anyway. So like all those things combined together. Now we understand, I think it's getting clearer, that there was huge civilization centers in Mexico and South America that branched right up through the Mississippi Valley with the mound building people, and then that spreads out all across. I mean, North America was just not only fully peopled, but heavily influenced by these southern civilizations, right? These pyramid builders and like those cultures, that brought maize up through into North America and stuff like that. So you're saying like maybe a reference to those people groups that were down there.
I think it was hard to ignore.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Right.
I mean, so for instance, I know last night when Tom was talking about how people would disappear for weeks at a time, or I mean, I think he was talking about his grandfather's time, right? Where they would days to weeks at a time
to go to trade.
Yeah, and they'd come back with like salt or shells or whatever the case may be. So you can imagine when they go south, right? And so when was it Coronado who came into current day Mexico City and they saw the buffalo, right? So I would assume that the people would have also gone as far as the buffalo, so they probably would have seen some of these, civilizations down there, and probably would have been like, whoa,
Yeah.
And then anyway, but yeah, so with the mound builder societies, when they disappeared, for whatever reason, some of those stories of those civilizations stuck with the people. So yeah, I really do feel there's a one time I heard a story talking about from a man who was talking about the Black Hills race, but when he started the story, he started from a perspective of back to a time when we knew more than we knew today. So but I'm thinking it's reference to at that time when he's talking about the Black Hills story. I think he's referring to the before that period, right? So there's a reference to civilization there in a handful of things that I've kind of spotted throughout my life. So, and talking with other people, like our ancestors must have come from the mound builders, mound builder people. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah.
Are there similarities in language?
I couldn't tell you that. There's that whole southeast when was really, really hit when the Spanish came up and the pigs, with the whole pig story, and how like people just got decimated down there. There's really no history of some of those tribes down there in the southeast at all, and up into the Mississippi Valley. It's crazy.
How about other tribes, like in different locations? Are there similarities in language there?
No, there's quite so there's like I was talking about with the language stocks. So out east you got again, I'm not too up in reference, but they're not intelligible at all.
Okay.
Really.
You think it's shaped by the landscape?
I think so, and I think when you go back far enough, there's probably just such a branching so long ago, when you're looking at, we were just talking about the footprints, correct, that were found down in the White Sands area.
Yeah, that basically for listeners that I'm sure a lot of have seen is there was a headline last week saying that there was pretty definitive evidence of how far back did they push it?
They pushed that back to 22,000 years,
and it's a footprint that's been dated by in the stone in the substrate. There's, I think it was pollen or seeds or something that they were able to carbon date. And why that's so important is because there's been a pretty rigid idea in the anthropology that North America has only been peopled for 14,000 years.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and a lot
of us have known that can't be true, right? It's like that cannot be true.
Speaking with linguists too, just to have the huge language bases that we had, that we're talking, it must have been, people at least 40 plus thousand years ago, right? And just the fact that the oldest sites are actually down in like South America. And in like parts of I believe it is at Monteverde that they still but there's like stuff in like Brazil they found in these caves that radiocarbon dated to like 25,000 years ago, but then scientists still refute this, say that there's this and that. And
it seems like there's a very strong resistance to any evidence that would overturn that 14,000 years. And so what I've seen and that's one of the inherent flaws in science, I think, is that people get entrenched. They're so invested in the theory that they brought into the scientific community that if evidence comes that refutes your life's work, I mean, how would you not
challenge
have
it?
How would you not have a bias like, hey, I wrote the book on this and I've been famous forever in the community because of this, and now everything I said turns out not to be true. and your ego just
they
cannot
want to protect their work.
Want to protect their work. And I mean, I empathize with that, but that's not why we're doing that kind of work, right? But to go back to what you said, this interesting piece about, and this kind of relates to what I was saying before, struggling to say before. And obviously I'm neither a linguist or a biologist, but I think it's interesting how there's this similar tools where, evolution is this biological phenomenon, language is this sociological phenomenon, but in the way that you can look at the genetic code of an animal and compare it to the genetic code of a relative animal and go, oh, we can tell by these alleles, this is about how long ago these animals diverged from each other. And then in language, they can do the same thing and look at two languages and go, oh, because of these similarities, we think this happened about this. So you're saying that there are linguists looking at it going, they had to have been here longer for there to be this much diversity to have developed.
And the fact that they, like our DNA, North and South America people, they were one people.
Right.
So you're talking about two entire continents filled with one people, with I don't even know how many thousands of different languages.
Jeez.
Right? So yeah, I mean, you're looking at a long time.
Man, it's like every step of the way the peoples of North and South America have had to, it's just crazy. Like even in this, like where it's like, well, no, you only been here 14,000 years. Like it's just like constantly like a disregard,
Yeah, exactly.
It's like amazing because the tools, the languages, the way of being of this hemisphere is so crucial to us, even as a so outside of like there's like all these like interesting racial and cultural things, but then there's humanity as one whole, one species. If we don't have these things that developed here, this way of seeing the world, like our chances of surviving long term are we have to integrate. Do you know what I mean? This stuff.
You know how I can sum that up for you? So there's this author he's from Standing Rock. His name is Vitalis Jr. And he talks about the East being, Europe and Asia area, and the West being North and South America. He said the East developed knowledge, the West developed wisdom.
Yeah. Yep. And you know that to be true in your heart if you're open to, you just know it to be true. Like it's so obvious. The being here. One of the interesting things for me is how everybody who spoke to us has imparted some kind of wisdom, and some of it is just so simple. It's not like you don't know it intellectually. Like for instance, we've received a lot of teachings from people here about generosity. We've witnessed a kind of generosity. Man, I'm gonna cry again. I've cried 100 times this week.
Yeah, same.
I have witnessed a kind of generosity that I intellectually understand is good, but have never seen. People who just want to give you something that moves you to your core. It's just not part of what I normally would call Western culture, but I love it being described as Eastern culture,
And the way that each offering that's come to us has a story, a teaching, it's they're very meaningful, the gifts that we've received.
And it makes you realize how a lot of intellectual knowledge can just come across as very masturbatory sometimes, like spouting off a whole bunch of data, and it's like, but how's your heart? How do you walk in the world? Like, how's your kindness? I mean, I just need and both things are so important. It's just like an integration.
And that's from when we talk about that East direction, that wisdom and understanding, right? So you can't have wisdom without understanding. So you can walk blind to certain things in this world, blind to certain knowledge points, if you will, so you got to take that knowledge and then you got to turn it into wisdom. So I think that wisdom comes from living with the earth.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Very close to it. But to just continue to say like, oh, you're only 14. It's only been here 14,000 years. It's almost like, oh, this is a little sidebar in history. It's man, it's unfortunate. And
every person that you have introduced us to this week, Travis, has been so magnificent and has had a teaching to offer us, a story to share with us that has brought, as Daniel just said, I mean, I think you've seen us cry so many times this week. I am really it's been a profound journey. So thank you for this beauty that you have and you've welcomed us. So what's the word? Welcome so deeply. Is this a word?
So that's the word, man. That's the word that connected Daniel and I together. So Wachekia actually means it means to pray. But at its core, it really means to be a good relative too. So whenever you embrace your relative, that's Wachekia.
Yeah, your network of people here is, man, they're good folks. That's been really awesome to see, and how we've been embraced. And we were joking last night, or remember, Grant, we were all sort of sitting up in our hotel room talking about going home, because I've been really lucky to have Avani here with me on this trip, because I don't have to go home and be and then and we were talking about trying to go home and be and then
with someone.
A deer walked up to us at the sweat lodge, and we touched it, and then there was a white buffalo, and it led all these buffalo, and then we were going through all these things that really happened on this trip that just sound
surreal.
They don't sound like they could be real, I mean, they all happened, and
didn't you kind of when I was originally kind of talking with you a little bit, you were kind of, and I was relating to you an experience that happened to us, right? And you're kind of oh, come on, man.
I didn't know. This guy full of it. People tell you stuff, and
right.
You don't know if they're telling you the truth. Whenever they speak of things that seem, what'd be the word? Things that seem beyond the physical.
Yeah.
When you have those moments where the veil parts and. Yeah, a deer comes to you at the sweat lodge. I mean, Travis, you walked over and picked up a deer.
We'll get back to the show in a moment, but first, you can now watch the WildFed TV show on myoutdoortv.com. They offer a free trial, so if you just want to check out all 10 episodes of Season 1, that's a great way to do it. So keep an eye out for that. Season 2 will premiere on the Outdoor Channel in early 2022. Now, back to the show.
That's really weird, man.
Right.
I mean, as someone who hunts and talks every day to people who hunt, and we have deer stories, right? That's the primary, when you say hunt, people think deer, right? That's the first thing that comes up for most people. I know a lot of people who interact with a lot of deer. I have never seen or heard of a person you just walked over to a deer and picked it up, man, as we're getting ready to go into the Inipi. It's
to be fair, I mean, obviously that animal looked like she wasn't doing too well.
But she comes over to we light the fire, and she comes over.
Right.
Avani, you were just speaking. Yeah. What were you speaking of before that?
Yeah, I had just through some beautiful teachings that I've received in the last 8 years of my life, I've been told by elders, in moments of prayer or moments of reflection, to be aware of visions or dreams that come through, when you're resting, if animals come to visit you.
And then we hear this crashing.
And I hear this crackling.
You said it, and as you finished the sentence, there was a crashing sound.
Right, and we sort of heard it, and then we kept talking, and I said, yes, to see what animal and what teaching might be there. And then we hear the crashing again, and then everyone lights their flashlights, and we see her, and she's just gazing towards us. Almost asking us to come and be with her for a moment, perhaps, or however.
So it's a deer at probably late stage chronic wasting disease, a doe.
Yeah.
And she's just 25 yards from the lodge, and we walk down because she looks kind of stuck, and she's got that zombified thing going on, right? And she's drooling, and her legs are stuck in this fallen tree, and you just sort of picked her up, and then we sat there with her for a while. I mean, I went over and put my hand on her thinking, okay, she's going to buck up when I do that.
Right,
and she just stayed there, man.
Yeah. It was a beautiful and confusing time.
Very
Yes.
confusing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
What to do, but yeah, there's seeing that white buffalo was really powerful. I was wondering if you could share a little bit about that so that people know why I'm going oh my God, a white buffalo. But there's one of the more important stories, right, that come from here about the white buffalo. Do you mind sharing a little bit about it?
Yeah, the white buffalo calf is considered very sacred to the people. There's so much symbolism, so much there. But essentially, what happened was there was a camp that was starving, and this camp, they needed to send out some scouts to find some food, so they send out 2 scouts to go look for food. And while these scouts are out and about, they see like this mist, and from this mist comes out this beautiful woman. She's wearing this beautiful white buckskin dress, and these 2 men, one has really good thoughts and one has really bad thoughts. And as this beautiful woman approaches closer, the man with the bad thoughts wanted to go and take her, and the man with the good thoughts is like, no, there's something sacred's happening right now. And so she approaches and she tells the person who's thinking the bad thoughts, here I am, come, I'm yours, come take me. And as he gets there, when he does, they're enveloped by this like cloud comes down, and then when the cloud lifts, there's snakes. Some say rattlesnakes. And she then tells the young scout there to she gives him some directions about what he's to go back and tell the people.
The one who wanted to take her?
No, the one who wanted to take her just turned into a bunch of snakes.
Turned into the snakes.
Yep. Yeah. And then so she gave direction to the one with the good thoughts to go back to the camp and prepare for her coming. And so when she comes, she's coming from the east. So I've been told, she comes from the east, and she bears a gift, a bundle, a sacred bundle. And the chief of the village accepts her, and she's there. And there's all kinds of stories about different little intricate stories of when she came in. But the gist of it is that she came in and she gave the people directions, and she offered this bundle. She offered it 3 times, and then on the 4th time, she actually handed it to the chief, and the chief took the bundle. And then within that bundle was what we call the chanupa, the sacred pipe, the first sacred pipe. When she leaves, she turns around, she looks at the people, and she gets down, and she kind of gets on the ground, and she turns into a black buffalo. She turns around, looks at the people again, or the buffalo at that point turns around, looks at the people again, rolls around on the ground, turns into a red buffalo. Same thing, turns around, looks at the people, wallows, turns into a yellow buffalo. Turns around, wallows, then she turns into a white buffalo, and she walks back to where she came from. And so that's why the white buffalo calf is so central to the people. Now, the white buffalo calf in physical form is also very rare, a very rare creature. So when we talk about the old buffalo herds of millions upon millions, you can imagine the excitement when they saw a white buffalo.
Yeah.
And so now the accounts that I have read talk about how a reverence, yes, but a reverence in the sake of a hunter.
Yeah.
And so when they saw that white buffalo, like that was their prize at that point, that was their goal. And so white buffalo robes were highly, highly regarded as very, 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 very sacred also. And I don't even know of anybody who has an old white buffalo robe, But it would have been something that was very, very, very special, for sure. And so you can imagine that transfer of power that warrior who got that white buffalo must have felt, He must have felt invincible for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
So, yeah, very... And I know there's a lot of, people today kind of have this almost a Christian point of view to where when it's like a white deer or a white moose or a white bear, to where it's so sacred you can't touch it, But the old buffalo hunting days, there was a different mentality, a different thought, for sure.
That there'd be so much honor in a hunter.
Yes.
Harvesting a
medicine,
white buffalo,
right?
medicine.
Well, you can imagine what Daniel must have felt. So can you imagine if that was a white buffalo in a herd of hundreds of thousands, if not a million?
Well, so when we're in Fort Yates and it's like the supermarket there, it's called like White Buffalo Foods or something, right? You see this iconography and the importance of it, just, how it's the legacy of that story has influenced the culture. And then when we went down, so, how we got here was you reached out to me A lot of people reach out to me, you know, say, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? And I just follow my heart and who I communicate with, you know. And we started talking, and you said, you know, I'd like you to come out here and get a buffalo. And, you know, it's just like, is this real? Okay, I'm going to come out and do this. And you told me about Ron Brown Otter. And, you know, he's the largest, for people listening, he's the largest he runs the largest native bison ranch in the country, right?
Yeah.
I was sort of picturing we were going to walk out to this ranch and go through like a fence gate, and there'd be a bunch of bison standing there like cows on a farm, and I was going to shoot one. And I was like, you know, that's how this is going to happen, and I'm okay with that. And you know, because I was really interested in the kind of the food, and but also the cultural connection. And hey, if that's how it is, then that's how it is, you know. I did not realize what it was going to be like and how huge this property was. And we went driving around looking for the herd, and how vast it was, and then how big the herd was, and how pristine that landscape was. It felt like, aside from the fact that we had a ranch truck to get around, I felt like it was 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago, you know, where that bowl that we went down into where all the bison were. And then I remember you being like, there's a white buffalo, you know?
Right. Yeah. I never knew that was out there.
And then, I mean, I'm going to say this and you guys tell me if it went any different way, but there was just bison, just hundreds of them, and they're just grazing. And we get up on the top of the truck. We're like a kilometer away. Yeah. And through the binos, we're like glassing this white buffalo, and she just gets up and looks at us. Like she knows we're looking at her. Yeah. Is the impression I had.
Like this, yeah.
And she starts kind of moving around like, hey, I'm not sure. Like
she's like a lightning pattern. She kind of started moving.
Yeah, zigzagging around, and she's like,
she's the only one moving at that point.
Right. They're all moving in the sense that they're eating, but they're not on the move.
Yeah.
And she's like, I know, I'm not.
And how many buffalo were there at that that
200 to
point?
300 at least, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And she starts kind of going like, I'm gonna get out of here. She starts to head off toward the river. She fords the river, and then just the whole herd just starts moving, man. And then all of a sudden, like something out of the Serengeti, they're just crashing down through the water splashing it, and they all head up on that line, and they're so far away now, it's like ants, you know? Yeah. Seeing ants out on the landscape, like they all kind of go up over that hill, over the top of the crest, and
even Ron said he'd never seen that before. Remember when they were all kind of walking up on that hill?
Yeah.
I've never seen them go up that hill like that,
really?
That big before. Yeah, he mentioned that.
So one thing that really struck me was the buffalo here is so important and so essential, but there's never this thing of like, well, you shouldn't kill one. Mm-hmm. So what I'm used to is when something is sacred in our culture, you don't touch it. Yeah. You know what I mean? There's all this stuff. And I love this thing of like, it's sacred. Let's go kill one. Yeah. You know, and you said to me, you're like, man, you know, I'd be really interested in having that white buffalo, you know? And I was like, oh, like that surprised me.
Oh, yeah.
You know? And then but it makes so much sense. Like, it didn't surprise me in the sense that I don't get it. It surprised me in the sense of I would expect it to be taboo.
Oh, sure.
You know, like.
I think other, I mean, I don't know if I want to go this way, but there's like New Age Indians, right, so to speak.
Sure, I bet.
Yeah, so, and that's where we were talking about how too sacred to touch. It's like almost that's like just a Christian point of view. It's not the old point of view.
Right. I really like that because as a hunter, I don't struggle anymore with the idea that something is sacred to me and I will kill and eat it. It's like to me that actually makes the most sense. But when all your food comes from the supermarket and you don't have those needs anymore, then you can see how you get to that place of hands off because your life gets so domesticated that all your needs are provided for you. So it's like a domestic dog that gets an allotment of kibble every day can see an animal that it would normally want to go kill and eat, but doesn't need to anymore. Right. So then you get to the point of like, well, why would I? I don't need to. Understandably, but
leads to disconnection from the earth. And I feel like this is so much of what we've been talking about this week. Mm-hmm. And Travis keeps bringing us back to, like, for the hunters with the white buffalo, it's that intimate and deep connection to the earth, to the animal, that then you bring back to your people and are fed
Yeah, and clothed by
And clothed by it.
Sheltered by it.
Yeah.
Whenever we mentioned to anybody on the reservation about, like, oh yeah, and there was this white buffalo, everybody's like, there's a white buffalo there? Like, he had a white buffalo?
Right.
Like you said, like an all white buffalo?
Yeah.
Like a healthy white buffalo? You know, there's a lot of that, you know? It was really cool.
Yeah, so I mean, I really don't know if he was trying to keep this. I don't think he was trying to keep a secret, because like, for instance, Ray, like, people who go out there know about it, and then they'll, you know what I mean? But this might be on a whole different level at this point. But yeah, that's what I was even telling Ron. I said, you know, wouldn't be surprised if people actually just want to come get a hold of you just to come see the buffalo.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
So.
Well, it's there, and when we finally caught up, so Ron kept saying, what we're looking for is a bull that has kind of separated off from the herd. I didn't expect it to feel like a hunt. That's, I guess, what I was saying before. I thought
it was a hunt for sure.
It was like a hunt,
Yes.
yeah.
And you were stalking and everything. All of us were stalking.
Yeah.
You know? It's fun. It's kind of funny watching you go, and then Grant and Oliver behind you, and you know,
With the cameras.
You guys were
exactly,
getting
yeah.
down low, also holding all your gear.
Yeah.
you know,
But even
it was amazing.
Avani, like, she knew what to do. I was watching, so I was standing back and I was just watching everybody, you know. But like, even Avani, like, you could tell when the buffalo would start begin looking her way, she'd get down in the grass right away. She had her stock on too.
Yes, that's it.
I was saying to Travis that one of my favorite things when you take somebody hunting is that this is so deeply instinctual. Everybody drops 6 inches down as soon as the prey is around. You know, like nobody had to tell you to do that,
No,
right? You
it's
just know to do it.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, especially someone like Grant who's like 15 feet tall. It's like how much does it help? Like when you crouch down like that, you're still taller than I am.
Yeah.
You know, it's like how helpful is it to drop 6 inches, but you just do it anyway. You just
Right.
know
Trying
to
to get
do
the
it.
grass is pretty high. You're trying to get
Yeah.
But it was
change your
literally like
profile.
right when everybody got out of the truck too. They just way out of you know.
And
And
I noticed Grant had a different technique. I feel you almost like you have to bend over
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
forward to
right.
get down as low as you guys, whereas like, you know,
Yeah.
there's more of this crouch approach, and Grant was more
Yeah.
folded in half.
And there's some like walking on my knees.
That first bull we tried to stock up on, and looking down at him in there, and he kind of goes down into that river bottom. And part of me is like, oh, this is really cool. I think I can get a shot if I didn't have these two dudes next to me running around with the cameras.
Yeah.
And I think I get a shot, but then it's like, man, that is a really big animal. If I shoot him down in that river
Across that
bottom,
water.
like how are we
Yeah.
going to get him out of there?
That's
I
some of
guess-
the most fun I've ever had.
Right, and I want, we got done. You go, that was the funnest thing I've ever done on WildFed. We've done some pretty fun stuff, man. I want people to obviously watch season 2 of the show. It's going to start airing in the winter, and I don't want to give too much of the story away, but so we'll skip ahead to the fact that we eventually do get a bison on the ground, a bull on the ground. Maybe we do.
Yeah.
And I am humbled by the amount of work. Everybody had to, you kept bringing this up, like everybody has to say like, but imagine in the buffalo days, like
Right.
how would it have been then? How much work and how many of these animals on one of these big hunts?
Right.
You know, whether it was a jump or whether it was, a mounted hunt where hundreds of animals are on the ground now and you got to process them. You and I process it. And it was great being out with Ron, as a rancher, because he's like, start to feel that coffee now, if you guys can't tell. Ron's like, you want me to pick it up with a tractor? So, and you and I are like, no, we want to do it on the ground. He's like, oh, you want to do the old way? Okay. And he's sort of sitting back laughing at you and me as
This
we're...
amused look on his face.
He is. He was.
Yeah.
I think he was really amused when we were first coming. Okay, well, let's go see what we're gonna get ourselves into, right?
The way it starts, I want to be like, I was joking with you, like a CIA interrogator. I roll out my knife kit. Everything's all clean and perfect, right? We make those initial cuts and everything's going smooth, and then the physical labor part, it just starts kind of being like, all right, like a breakdown. It's just like we're just start muscling everything, and just to get the guts out of it was really, really difficult.
Yeah.
It felt like we went to the gym. Like I had just gotten done like a workout by the time just the stomach was out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a lot of work, man, for sure.
Physically demanding.
Yep. And that, and I think we're also just so inexperienced.
Yep.
I'm not an experienced buffalo hunter. You know what I mean?
Right.
And we were kind of making the jokes too that the old grandmas are just laughing down at us. So traditionally, on the hunt, Unless it's like a group of a war party group or something. But the hunt was usually a communal hunt. It was a family affair. The whole village went out, and so the men would shoot the buffalo, but it was usually the women that came in after and started the butchering process.
Yeah.
Yep. And that, I mean, just they must have had tricks of the trade. They must have known where to make certain. The way we butcher, maybe it might have been a little bit different back then. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Instead of taking quarters, they probably had tricks of the trade to do it right there. Maybe they just. I don't know.
We talked a lot about using the hide as a natural tarp too, right? So you're keeping I mean, that part of it probably isn't recoverable, huh? That's lost. Yeah, the
butchering techniques unfortunately, a lot of old documentation is more coming from the male perspective. It's very little of like female camp life, female duty type stuff, other than just passages, like no real deep details.
And it's this component of human history, the division of labor, which today is like this so controversial and politically incorrect, the idea that men and women did different things.
Right.
But like historically they did. And it allowed us to that synergy. If you do this and I do this, we can get way more done. And that allows for this incredible flourishing of the human species.
Yeah.
It's like sad that it's frowned upon today, but something that has been pointed out to me by some thinkers on the topic is that with industrialization, women's jobs were eliminated very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there was still a need for men to take on the kind of roles that they traditionally did. So, those kind of leadership roles of like, okay, there's a transitional place. It's like, okay, well, you're not going to be the village chief, but you can be the CEO of the company. Like those kind of roles still needed to be done. The military roles still required like men to go and fight and die. But like all these jobs that women did, cooking, it's like, oh, the microwave, sewing, the sewing machine, like all this stuff quickly replaced all these jobs and then had left women with a void of roles. And then, but traditionally these roles were so important.
Yeah.
And sort of lament that I see women trying to find today the fulfillment in a world that lacks, the things that were there traditionally, the really important things they did for their people and their communities.
Yeah. Yeah, now it's like, men too.
Today now, men. Yeah, because now it's happening that men are, in the last couple decades, all those male roles are starting to now be, Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think, it's definitely different times, man.
Yeah. And we adapt and we adjust.
Yeah, right? Exactly. But in the Buffalo days, the teepee, the lodge was the woman's place. Like that was. So like if she didn't like the way the head chief of that lodge was talking, she'd kick him out of there because that was her lodge, right? There was definitely that ownership that the women had of their lodge, and they had their own societies. So like there was competition there amongst the women too, like who could do the best quill work, who could make the best cradle board. Which they would have carried their babies in on their back, the cradle boards.
You're saying who has the most notches on their fleshing tools?
Exactly. Right? They've done the most hides. Yeah. So they would have took their fleshing tools, and whenever they would finish a deer hide, they would have made a particular mark, an elk hide a particular mark, a buffalo hide a particular mark. And so I was always kind of like, ooh, look at, it would have been, look at how much I've done. Yeah. She thinks she's so good over there. Look at mine. Look at how much I've done. So there was definitely a little friendly competition there, but a lot of knowledge transfer too. It was always like good. So if you want my work to look, if you want your work to look like my work, then here's some tricks of the trade. And there's always there was never like a hoarding of that information. It was definitely all in good fun though.
I loved hearing Loretta speak last night of now, the work she's doing with young women.
Yes.
And bringing these teachings back to young girls, and the requirement for her that they each have to, produce 4 items that they create with their hands. And they have to be industrious, as she says, and creative, and bring forth, whether it's beadwork or, I thought that was really lovely that she shared that yesterday, and that she's bringing this back to the to the community.
Yeah, she's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, Loretta. So Loretta is who cooked us a meal last night, and she cooked us a pretty traditional meal.
Yeah.
Buffalo tongue. The soup that she made with those prairie turnips. I'm still thinking about those. It's funny because I noticed Oliver didn't really, he's a little pickier of an eater. So at the end, we were clearing all the plates, and I pick up his bowl, and it's got like one bitten prairie turnip and then 3 whole ones. And I was so full, but I was like, I can't throw those away. I'm like eating those,
They're amazing.
They're so good. But one thing, I think I heard her sharing this with you, saying that the women would be the women who determined when it was time to move camp, based on, was she telling you something about that, like, hey, the grass has all been eaten and there's too much waste around, the firewood has been kind of dried depleted. Up, like, because women also gathered firewood, right?
Exactly.
The amount of physical work that women were doing is just staggering.
So if anybody's ever done tanned a hide before, now when you make the fact that that's a buffalo hide, and the women that was primarily one of the jobs that they did, was tanning hides for the teepee, so to speak, and you can see there's so many pictures of the women of like Fort Berthold. I can think of some pictures that were done of the early 20th century, so the women were still doing some of that work then, but yeah, they must have just been some arm wrestling champions. I'm not joking, because working that buffalo hide, trying to grab a hide, you can speak to this when we're just trying to grab a hide, trying to get the hide off.
Yeah, imagine you took like your a blanket or a sheet and you covered it in Vaseline, and now you got to grip it and pull it tight. It's really hard to do
for hours.
For hours.
You guys were smoked by the end of that.
It was tough. Well, because then it started raining, man, and then it was like, we got to get this done. Also, you start off with the buffalo going, like, I had it all in my head, like I had worked through the problem in my mind many times. But then on the ground, and we started doing it, and then you're like, oh, this is going to take, if I do it like this, it's going to take 3 days. Like, I have to start moving faster. But I want to go back to this thing. One of the things, looking at, I've been very interested in, when you look at pre-industrial and particularly pre-agricultural in the large agricultural sense, you look at the pre-agricultural peoples around the world, I'm very interested in what's similar. Like when people are living with the land, like what's similar everywhere you go in the world. And one of the things that seems to be very similar is men hunt. And because hunting is this difficult and potentially very dangerous role, men get to take a lazier position, and women end up doing a whole lot of other stuff, but it's a mutually beneficial relationship, because the women are like, look, I don't want to go do those hunts, like that's really dangerous, but they end up taking on many more jobs as a result.
So I can give you a great example of that. So in our culture, there was the well-respected important men had multiple wives. So my mom, her great-great-grandfather his name would have been Two Bears, and he had 4 wives. And so when you think about it, men who go off to, say, some warfare or a hunt, and there's some lethality involved, you have an imbalance of, you have so many more women than you do men, so therefore it was beneficial at times to have multiple.
Because a lot of men were dying.
Well, just because there's probably some less men, right? So, and there was just prominence, certain people were just more charismatic, more, so, but there was definitely a survival component to that, because it'd be like, if there was a monogamy, then you would have women who would, pretty soon wouldn't have a man, right? So multiple wives, I think, was part of that. One, as far as our culture goes, I can't speak for every culture, but I can imagine it's probably similar in a lot of cultures too.
Well, and you'll
especially where warfare might have been kind of a practice too.
You'll read a lot of times about like the women being like, okay guys, time to go hunting, like it's been a little while, we're getting low on meat here, like, and the dude's just like hanging out in hammocks, like, oh, we already did our work. It's like, no, it's been a while, get out there, you gotta go hunting, like.
For sure. I think man, it would have been fascinating to to see, I guess.
Yes.
And I want to really believe there's people like you who are revitalizing the language and continuing on with it. Is that happening? Do you see that happening? Or, what's the youth like right now out here, and what's the future for the Siouan people?
Well, I can't speak for all the Siouan.
No, you must.
But there's definitely optimism. There's a recognition that if, especially amongst like modern indigenous peoples, that if we don't stand up for Mother Earth, who does? Who will? And I think there's a lot of great intentions out there. Sometimes I just wish people would put in a little bit more of the education component to how maybe from a historical aspect and how that can be moved into the future.
We're probably not going to see a time where the U.S. government says have all your land back.
Right.
There probably aren't going to be. A lot would have to happen for the buffalo to truly be rewilded on the landscape.
Sure.
And people have gotten very, we're all so comfortable with modern living, with running water and
right.
Stores and laundromats and all these kind of things. Like, so the ways that, because there's so much nostalgia here. Mm-hmm. Everybody brings up the buffalo days everywhere we went.
Yeah,
right?
that nostalgia. So here, let's take the best of the historical stuff and the best of the modern stuff, so we can somehow move it into the future.
Yes.
Because when you're talking about the nostalgia about the buffalo days, it's like, okay, it's January, you got this little fire and the buffalo hide keeping you from the elements.
Right.
Now you get a really upset stomach. It's blizzarding outside, and you got to go outside and take care of your stomach, right? You know what I'm referring to. It's like, course, now imagine if you're an elderly person or whatever, you know what I mean? You're not
thinking about that when you're being nostalgic.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, you're just thinking of the summer days kicking back, right? It's never in the winter time, right? So I mean, there was some tough days. So if we can take
hard living.
if we can take that hardiness, right, of then, and maybe some of the modern conveniences, but I mean, there's got to be. I'm optimistic about the future. At times I'm pessimistic, no doubt.
Yeah.
Just because the amount of work we have ahead of us is tremendous. And I wish I could do more. I hope there's people out there who have a love of language and a love of nature and a love of
sharing.
Exactly. Because there's a lot of. I was kind of alluding to this last night a little bit. I feel like there are those handful of people who they want to be the last speaker. You know what I mean? Like they almost like want that. It's like that tragedy, but at least I'll get a little notoriety. I mean, I don't. I'm not. Of course, I only think there's a few people like that. But it's just like. You need people on the opposite end of the spectrum who'd be like, I am a speaker. I'm gonna, hopefully people come to me, want to learn. I want to share, same thing with traditional handcrafts, if you will, food source. And that's kind of why I reached out to you too. I feel like, what you're doing with food, your food, how your education, if you will, the food is all around you. Yeah. Right. I love that tagline. Food connects us to the earth, and so are we gonna eat that Twinkie in the package, or are you gonna eat this buffalo liver? I'd rather have the strength of the buffalo running through me. But as a kid I liked that Twinkie though. Of course, right? So I don't know, it's just that historical those great historical things that we know that worked really well in the past, that maybe are being suppressed today. That we can bring those back, and we can have a better, brighter future forward for that, for sure.
Sometimes when I'm trying to think about something, what I'll do in my mind is make it super exaggerated and blow it up into huge hyperbole, because then it helps you to see if something like makes sense or not, right? And so one way to do that would be like, human beings leave the planet, we go to Mars, we colonize the solar system, we're living in ships and space stations. Like, will there be Dakota people there?
Right. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know.
Like is the language still there?
Is
and
Elon
how does it
concerned about us, though?
Yeah,
No,
or
just
like
kidding.
well, yeah, exactly. Probably not, but you know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, exactly.
we're
Well, they're
1,000 years out.
right, and that's kind of like days where I'm pessimistic. When I was telling you a little bit about how there's just social issues, right? And so at times there's these traumas that come out in the trauma needs to come out, but maybe doesn't come out in a healthy way. And so we tend to point our anger at other people sometimes versus when we need to look within ourselves, right? So like everybody, I think multiple people mentioned that don't ever forget to pray for yourself.
Yes.
You know, because you got to be that stone, you got to be that rock. And so when we're talking about like language, for instance, and there's a lot of, I was telling you, there's a lot of contentiousness around language. For not everybody's on the same page. You know, a lot of people think there's too much outside influence. You know, there's just issues with the language, but there's a lot of anger there. And so that's kind of when I feel pessimistic. Our language is in such danger today that certain discussions need to take place. You know, certain hurt needs to happen, but we need to point to where we can have our language flourish again, because at times it's definitely hard for me to see the language surviving the next 50 years,
Right.
let alone the next 500 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I'm optimistic that at least with certain recordings via written, audio, visual, you know, that there will at least be some preservation if the technology allows that to exist. You know, I mean, people have done book burnings in the past.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, people are certainly capable of doing that again. So I would hate to think that all that knowledge could get burned up. Right?
Wow. And one thing something I just really have appreciated out here is, like, you've told me about a friend of yours from the Czech Republic who is fluent Lakota speaker. Dakota or Lakota speaker?
Well, both for the most part. Yeah.
And that you're not like, oh God, like this white guy thinks he's gonna speak. You know, like I haven't felt that from you. You know,
Right.
and I think because that's gonna be an important piece. Is like, it seems like whoever can learn it to help. You know, it's obviously we're in this climate now in the country where, you know, there's just like, oh, it's appropriation. It's like, well, like, yeah, but would you rather it goes away? You know,
Right,
so
right. Yeah, that's a tough topic that needs to be talked about.
it's complicated,
you know, for
and
sure.
there's a lot of nuance to it. But I thought coming out here, I guess that's what I'm trying to allude to here as well, is I thought, oh great, I'm going to go out there
And
as a white guy. I'm going to kill a buffalo. Like I was just expecting to get a lot of resistance from people, and it to look like be a bad look, you know.
Sure.
Everyone
the
you
complete
introduced me to
opposite.
has just been like so kind, and then I'd be like, yeah, who got the buffalo? Oh, Daniel. Like, cool, man. Oh, that's awesome. You know, like none of that. I didn't get any of that, and I'm sure that's out here, but I didn't. Not from anybody I encountered.
Right. They're out there.
Oh, I'm sure they are. But they weren't any of the people that we met. The only person Grant and I got a little pushback from a white lady at the supermarket. You remember that? You were like, oh, that's the first
and she
not
wasn't even
so
that
nice
bad.
person that I met in North
Like,
Dakota.
what are you guys up to? We're hunting a buffalo. Why are you gonna do that?
Yeah, why would you do that? But you know, we've been so well received, and it just seems like anybody who, how am I trying to say that? Like, whoever wants to help build the ark that keeps a thing afloat, it seems important.
Yeah.
You know, it's obviously so important that it's the people who actually are, you know, are like genetically the people. It's like that's really important. But you know, I appreciate that, like some of like the language revitalization. It's, you know, like we're seeing in Maine with our friend Arthur, for instance, who's one of very few Passamaquoddy speakers.
Right.
He's a white guy. He's gotten a lot of flack for that.
Yeah.
But it's like, yeah, but do you want the language?
But is he an ally or an enemy at that point?
That's it.
That's it,
Yeah.
right?
And
That's it.
I think a lot of times it's the intention you come forth with, that you come to the work with, and the intention and the heart and the ability to listen and to learn and to show that you are authentic in your purpose for being here. And I felt you were saying that, like you said, that people can feel here whether you come to them with like a clear heart, and that if they feel you are, then they're going to be willing to share and to tell stories.
Right. Yeah, because I was just imagining the number of douchebag white guy hunters who've come out here to kill buffalo. And I
think you could sense that from Ron a little bit too. Maybe he's kind of had some experience as well.
Well, and here I am, just the next face in a steady stream of these guys, you know. But no one treated me like that, man. No one. I was just like, I thought I was gonna have to work really hard to overcome that. I was willing, you know, like I'm like, cool, I love some obstacles. Throw them in front of me, like I'll like to climb over things. Yeah. So I was like ready to have to like prove that I had a good heart, but I never had to. I just blew my mind, you know.
Yeah, well, that's that again. That's that wachekya. You know? Treating others, just be a good relative. That's all we can do.
Well, I mean, I just want you to know that we would love to host you anytime. You've got family in Maine, and
great,
man, it's like I would love to be able to extend something similar to you. So just know, anytime you want to come visit us,
any season,
and a moment's notice.
Wopila.
Yeah, this has been one of the most moving trips I've ever experienced, and every single day blew my mind, and maybe more than my mind, but like blew my mind in the sense that like my mind had to like shut down so my heart could function more clearly, and we're not done the work yet, man.
No, man,
you and I got some work to do today.
We still got to go get that meat, man.
Yeah, we got to go get that meat. It's in the community center.
I wish we could weigh it, you know, to see what the final tally is, but it was a lot of work.
Hundreds of pounds. I mean, the quarters alone, like,
took both of us to carry it.
The hindquarters you kind of couldn't carry on your own, right? It was like a 2-person job, but we still got a shoulder that needs to be cut.
Yep.
I mean, so this is like day 3 of the cutting.
Processing.
And it's kind of funny, like, again, being inexperienced myself, you know, because I have partaken in buffalo butcherings, but never to that extent, you know, to where it tackled the whole thing by ourselves. Because when we do it, there's like 8 to 12 guys, you know, everybody's taking turns, everybody's jumping in, whatever the case may be. But really, really underestimated the amount of time it would take us to process that meat.
Avani knew. She kept being like, you guys are really underestimating the time.
But you make a great team.
Yeah.
It was amazing to watch the two of you the other day, especially out in the field. Yeah. It was
nobody got hurt. Yeah.
No.
Well, I
close calls, a couple of tumbles.
And this little bit. You know, when I first put that knife into the carotid artery, and you were like, right as you're saying, dude, be careful, that hide's really thick, and then the knife like slips out and I cut myself on the leg, you know, and it's oh man, I just an idiot, you know, like all those little things happen. And so I hurt myself a few times, you know. You know, you took a tumble, I took a tumble on the wet grass, and you know, but yeah, it was cool, man. I never felt like I needed to, like, sometimes when you're working with somebody like that and you kind of almost need to like oversee it, you know, it's like I just was tunnel visioned and I never even had to look up. Like we were just ripping, I was ripping. That was really fun to work together. Oh, you know what I wanted to talk about before we finish out is I had been like talking about eating the liver raw, you know, and I did not expect to go over and grab handfuls of that blood and drink it. You know, I would have never done that if I had seen you do that. That was awesome. That was an awesome experience. I mean, something there. Yeah. You know, but when we got the liver out, and I was like, okay, we're gonna cut up pieces. But those guys came. You know, we were up at Ron's place, and those guys came, and I misunderstood. I thought they wanted a piece of the liver, so I went over and cut a lobe off, thinking, a gift to these guys. They want a piece of liver to bring home, and it was like, no, cut it up in cubes. They want to eat some raw liver. Yeah. So now we're all kind of gathered around, and I just never thought I would see my lovely wife eat a piece of fresh, raw, still warm liver. And I wanted to ask you about it, baby, because, you know, you're not like squeamish, but, you know, you just have your sort of things that you're like, no, why would I do that? I'm not going to do that. But there you were eating a big old chunk of bloody raw liver. I just was blown away.
So many things this week I think I thought I wouldn't ever experience. And then the thought of them were, like, the thinking about them was very challenging for me. But then when you're in it and you're there and you're with the animal and you're with the camaraderie of the group, it was like, of course I'm going to take a piece of this. Yeah. And I was nervous, but there was like no, you know, yes, it was a yes. but I was anticipating having a hard time consuming it. Put it in my mouth. I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is delicious, you know? So I was surprised, but it was not easy
We were
for
joking
me
this morning
initially.
about her throwing up right now.
Imagine if I had the tongue, or with the tongue too, was another one. Yeah. So
Seeing that tongue go into the pot is one thing. Seeing it come out when it's kind of the outer sheath is tightened up and all the taste buds have like really popped on it, and you're like, that's a tongue.
right. Yeah.
It's delicious though.
Oh, so delicious.
Yeah.
And really, because saying last night, and I loved the simplicity of the food in the sense, like you're really tasting the food itself.
Yeah, she didn't put any seasonings.
Yeah.
Nothing.
And you didn't need anything.
No.
Tasted so good.
Yeah, that's
So-
something you're always saying. Because
Yeah.
like if I take a piece of meat at home and I put like a rub on it, she doesn't really like it. She wants
To taste
She's like,
the
I just want to taste the
food.
meat. Like, you know, a little salt and pepper, okay, but like I don't want all these flavors all the time,
Yeah,
you know? And,
yeah.
and that was really cool. The simplicity of the meal last night, and there was some conversation about the humbleness that brings when you're not getting, you know, you get into all of these like really pretentious cooking techniques, and then it becomes more ego than it is experience, right?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
And I think from a sustainable food perspective too, I think it's a little better to eat a little bit more simply.
yeah.
You know, like to take say for instance, and to make a cookbook out of every single buffalo piece, if you will, but to do it in a way that the reservation youth would be like, how would I even cook this? What is this
Yeah,
ingredient?
right,
You know,
right.
I mean, I don't even have a machine to cook it in this fashion,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
or whatever the
yeah,
case
yeah,
may be.
yeah.
So just the simplicity of the food, I think, is really, really important too.
Yeah.
There's like Loretta was saying, there's just a humbleness there,
Yeah.
you know, not a pretentiousness, I guess,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and then a couple other things I wanted to mention. You've been on some small game hunts with me, but never a big game hunt, and I was very excited to have you there for that. But even more, it was after, because we were all driving to kind of have our little, you know, get together after the hunt, and I was so excited for you to experience the feeling when you get together
Yeah,
with
the
everybody
camaraderie, as they
after a
say, yeah.
success. Because there's those times, like Grant and I have had quite a few of them where it doesn't happen.
Right.
And the vibes when you kind of go back to the Airbnb or the hotel or wherever you are with your group after a kind of a failure, and it's just kind of a real bummer vibe, you know? Everybody tries to keep spirits high. But after a
Everyone.
success, we're driving there, and I was so excited for you to feel the jokes, the
Yeah.
laughter, everybody teasing each other, retelling the stories.
Yeah,
Everyone was lit up.
the parts of the day, you know, that made us
Yeah.
laugh. Or, can you
Yeah.
believe this happened? Remember when they all went crashing through the river? Oh my God.
Yeah.
And we each had something to bring to the table.
Yeah, yeah.
And then it was funny because there was such a high energy there. Then it was like everyone reached their max capacity from the day.
Yeah, I think our
and then there was like a
endorphins were-
silence. And everyone was staring in different directions.
Drooling,
Like, like
looking like
done.
no.
It's like
Okay, we're done.
Yeah, the endorphins were up here.
Yes.
And finally, there was about like a 2-minute period where I think where we were all just kind of
Yeah.
quiet there.
Yeah,
you
and it's
know?
like, all right, let's go home.
Wow. Yeah, that was a fun time for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, talk a little bit about the Wojapi, man. That was your first time experiencing like
Oh
that.
my goodness.
The what?
Whoa,
What's it
The
called?
Whoa, Jobby. Whoa, Jobby. Yeah, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because on this podcast, we have talked a lot about choke cherries over the
Yes.
last, couple of years, and then especially in the last couple of days. But, for me, working with choke cherries, it's like one of my favorite foods. When they're ripe, I just eat hundreds and hundreds and hundreds just raw,
Yeah.
But then going like, what do I do with these? And one of the challenges as like a wild foodist or whatever in this culture is we're reinventing a lot of stuff, trying to figure things out. It's like that idea of like reinventing the wheel or whatever. Getting to try some traditional preparations of it, all those thousands of years of trial and error already done, and it's like, hey, look, this is how they're good, and it's like, yes. So the wojapi is like a pudding of the juice of the choke cherry kind of cooked down,
but
and
there was
thickened.
there was still some berry skins in there.
Yeah, some
Yes.
berry skins, and every once in a while you get a little seed or whatever.
Yeah.
Could you believe how delicious that was?
Incredible.
No sweetener added to it, and it was like,
She was concerned about that. She's like, should I add a little sugar? I'm like, no, we're not into the sugar here,
so good. It was like a like a pudding.
Yeah.
And she made the juice as well, which was really good. But man, the wojapi's like, I'll be making that at home.
What did we have when we first got there? It was like everything mashed up.
That was just like her. She called it wasna. It's just the choke cherries. It was all just the choke cherries mashed up.
That was delicious
too.
Yeah.
But wasna is usually like more of like a pemmican,
traditionally
fat and buffalo
there,
meat.
like Tom was saying, there's like 3. He knew of like 3 versions of it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, like, and he was talking about how people would. Remember, he mentioned how there was different seasonings. Maybe somebody would do a little bit sage here or there, or something else. So yeah.
Oh right.
But I would say your basic foundation of it is your choke cherries, or around here also they use buffalo berries, and then your jerky meat, if you will, your dried meat, and then the suet, the fat from the kidneys. The kidney fat was the most prized.
That texture, yeah. Well, I guess because Grant and Ivani, you've both seen me. I'm like a proselytizing all the time, preaching the gospel of the choke cherry. I'm always, because I'm like, there's something here, guys. Like, this is the food, and everybody's like, I don't know, they're kind of bitter, they're kind of astringent. I don't know, I don't really like them. They're okay. And I've been like, you don't understand. This food is so. Yeah. So when I got here, and people were like, oh, this food is central, like buffalo and choke cherry. It's kind of like the foundation of everything. And I was like, finally, yes, I knew there was something more. And so, because I knew how. Coming out here, I understood that the buffalo, how important it was. Mm-hmm. I just knew choke cherry was I remember talking to you on the phone. I was like, so choke cherry is that a pretty traditional food? You're like, yeah. Now that I'm out here, I'm like, oh, it's a really important food.
So remember Tom said that was our first food.
Yeah.
On our way back to the hotel last night, when we got into Bismarck, we passed Choke Cherry Lane.
Oh, yeah.
So, for me, there was something so validating and affirming, because this whole time I felt like this is a really important food. And do people get how much food value it is? And I'm always like, for instance, I had found that study recently. I've brought it up a few times now about choke cherries planted over a square acre will produce more food value than a rotation of wheat and canola. So I've been using that to try to get through to people no, listen, this is really important. So anyway, now I'm walking away going what? I know. It is
it's like they're, I compare them to Old Faithful. It's like, whether it's rainy or drought, it's just they just come back every year.
You see them hanging on there, just glistening in the sun.
Every year.
Oh.
I'm really grateful to watch Loretta make wojapi.
Yeah, wojapi. Yeah,
last night, and to see how she is feeling it out. You know, for her, she said all women each have their own desired texture.
Yeah.
You know,
so everybody has their own little way. Yeah.
Some like it a little more thick.
She told you to cook it to where you like it, right?
Well, when I do it, yes. When I get home, that's it. So now I'll have a dish that I learned from her that I can bring to our home.
That's what I'm saying. So now I'm going to bring home choke cherries, and then it's there'll be some mutual excitement now. Yeah.
So you can imagine that wojapi then could be used as a remember how we were kind of joking how it'd be great on ice cream? Yeah, I mean, it could be used in multiple ways in and of itself too.
My oatmeal, maybe.
Yeah. Or I wonder. I've always wondered about maybe using it as a marinade, or there's other things you can do with it for sure.
Right. Yeah. Especially if you we're kind of bringing it into modern culinary traditions, you can see a lot of applications for it. Yeah, I'm really excited about choke cherries at any time of year. I'm just generally turn me into a choke cherry. I'm happy, but actually, I'm glad you brought it up, because that piece is one of the most, from the wild foods perspective, one of the biggest things I'm going to be bringing home. I go home, there's no buffalo.
Right. Yeah. Got choke cherries though.
Man, I guess I know we got to wrap it up, but man, that tenderloin we ate the day we were butchering.
Oh my God.
A tenderloin the size of a
deer backstrap.
About the length of it, but bigger around than a deer tenderloin. Anyway, man, was that just so tender, delicious. That was just one tenderloin.
A lot of meat. How many people were eating? 7?
Yeah. And then we left with a plate of it, And then, I'm just so excited to bring all this meat home. I have no idea what I'm gonna. I'm in over my head right now.
Right.
I don't know how we're going to get it all home. And then when we get home, I got 3 freezers that are basically full. I have no idea what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But I'm going to do it.
some time to think about it. Though.
Share.
Yeah.
We'll share.
Exactly. But, well, sure, a little.
A little.
How about we? No, we will. I'm just joking. But I think we'll mostly.
Back to generosity lesson from the beginning.
Oh, I'm going to be very generous with the stuff that's currently in our freezer. No, that's been one of the cool things too. Is there's been so like everybody who's come through, it's been like being able to give.
Yeah.
Like if you gave, if everybody who came through, you gave a piece of deer like that, it's like you got no deer left at the end. But with this, it's like we were able to give so much of it.
Yeah.
It's still like so much. It's amazing.
Yeah,
So,
we gave to anybody who pretty much helped us out.
Yeah.
They wanted a piece. There you go.
just huge abundance. But so we got 3 days of driving back. Grant will meet you back home. You're flying out today, and somehow we're going to get it all home.
And we'll be back, Travis.
All
If
right.
that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
We would
You're all
like to
welcome. More, the more the merrier. I'm all about, we talked a little bit about this, but I'm all just about trying to be a good human, trying to be a good relative, and I have to go back and make it up to my wife and kids after this week,
Thank you, Desi.
Yeah, thank you, Desi.
The more the merrier. You guys are always welcome. Again, like I said, I reached out as a relative. That word wachekia, that's what that means it's also to pray. So to pray and to be a good relative, and please come again. I'm definitely going to hit you up on your offer.
Man.
Please
come out.
For sure, man.
Good.
So,
Start putting in for that moose tag.
yeah, definitely, man.
You've heard the podcast before. You got a sense of who's listening to it. Just want to give you, if there's anything you'd want to say in parting to the people who listen to this show.
Hopefully we can all just learn to carry ourselves with a little bit of humility. Learn to be a little bit more generous. Definitely take that strength and that courage to start looking within yourselves, and to continually remember that we're all in this together. We all got just the one life to live, and so we can make it the best. We can choose to be around good people, or we can or not. So blihicha, as we say. Blihicha po. Take courage. Stand up for what's right. And this earth, the earth, and so many people. There's again, it's difficult times, right? There's so much work that needs to be done. We're talking about the future generations here, and so there's so much at stake that you have to do it from a place of courage and strength, but of humility first and foremost, I guess. So
Yes.
Wopala.
Hechetu. Wopila.
Thanks for listening to the WildFed podcast. You can help us grow the show by subscribing and leaving us a rating and review. It ensures better rankings and more advertiser interest, which translates directly into better shows, more awesome guests, and a constant stream of fresh, new content. Have a question you'd like answered on the show, or a hunting, fishing, or foraging trip you'd like to host us on? Email us at info@wild-fed.com. And be sure to visit our website, wild-fed.com, to check out the WildFed video show and store. WildFed. Food is all around you.